wild hogs, feral hogs out there. I did have one charge me a couple years ago.
You left out snakes.
Oh, snakes.
Copperheads, rattlesnakes, water moccasins.
This is Luke Heffley. You're listening to the ATU Library Podcast, where we explore timely topics with professionals from Arkansas Tech University, the River Valley, and beyond. And we're here with Richard Hutto and Angela Chandler from the Arkansas Geological Survey. And they're also Arkansas Tech University alumni. So we're glad to have them here today. If you would introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do.
My name is Richard Hutto. I've worked at the Arkansas Geological Survey for about 15 years now, and most of that time has been spent doing field mapping, which involves going out, gathering data in the field, which would be just a portion of Arkansas, and then using that data to draw a geologic map of that area. The program is called State Map, and we've done that for 25 years now in the state of Arkansas in various areas, starting in South Arkansas, and then now we're mostly up in the Ozark Mountains.
Hello, I'm Angela Chandler, and I'm also a geologist at the Arkansas Geological Survey. And I do geologic field mapping. I also do education and public outreach, going out to schools and talking to different groups and leading teacher workshops and field trips. But field-based geology is my favorite thing to do.
Well, how long have each of you worked at the survey?
Well, I'm in my 15th year.
And I've been there for 22 years now.
So, Richard, what are some of your duties at the Arkansas Geological Survey?
Well, a typical field week would involve me getting things together to go to the field on Monday morning, Monday through Thursday each week, gathering data. So we'll go to usually a larger town near the area where we're going to be mapping. We'll stay there in a hotel or a cabin or whatever it may be, and then we'll take off and get out and actually hike around in the field. What we're really looking for are rock outcrops. We're interested in describing the rocks in a certain area. Where we're describing the rocks, we're really looking for contacts between different rock formations. So when we know what kind of rock it is, we can determine when it changes. And so any of those changes is what we want to document. That point, we'll take a point there. That's called a contact. We'll write down in a digital database that we can fill out in the field. It's in a data collector. And then we also just take regular field notes in a field notebook. We, of course, record the position where we are, the GPS coordinates, latitude and longitude. And then we make a description of whatever we need to say about it. And then we move on. And so we do that the 4 days a week. And then we head back to the office on Thursday. Friday, we fill out our paperwork or whatever we may need to do for that week or for the next week, and then we just do it all over again the following week. That's a pretty typical field week for me.
So, Angela, what are some of your duties at the Arkansas Geological Survey?
Well, since I'm not out mapping full-time anymore, I write the grant proposal for us to continue mapping every year through this program. It's a program with the USGS, a cooperative matching grant. And then I also do smaller scale mapping projects such as state park series where I get to go out and map within the state parks and produce a write-up about them. I also go out to different schools and talk with them about some of their science standards and also lead teacher workshops according to different subjects and data regarding our science and science standards. And also we get a lot of emails from the general public or calls from the general public about identifying rocks and minerals and fossils. So I identify a lot of fossils through email and photos they send in. So you never know what's going to happen in a day there.
How many animals have you come across out in the woods since you've been surveying?
Well, maybe the most remarkable thing is how few animals you see. Most of the time we're just walking along and you might hear some birds chirping or some squirrels barking at you, but you see deer and turkey, and we've seen a few bear and also wild hogs, feral hogs out there. They usually are more scared of you than you are of them, at least so far. I did have one charge me a couple years ago. I was just walking along a bluff. He just shot out from underneath it and right towards me. I just basically froze, and he just kind of skirted around me and just kept going. So I was glad he did that instead of running right over me. We're always with a field partner, so we're not alone out there to where if something happened, we'd be in big trouble. We could always have someone go for help if needed. So we've always tried to map as a team just for that reason, for safety.
You left out snakes.
Oh, snakes.
course, in the summer, late August when it gets hot, August, September, if you're walking the creeks, which we typically do in the summers until the leaves come off, if you have a creek that's big enough and large pools of water, then you're going to see usually a water moccasin hanging out, around that pool of water. Of course, this time of year, they're denning up. We've gotten into areas where there are snake dens, too. Just keep an eye out. Early spring's a bad time for snakes because they're just coming out. You got to watch out for underneath those rock ledges in the spring, too. Copperheads, rattlesnakes, water moccasins, of course, black snakes a lot as well. In fact, I saw a big black snake last week, out in a dry creek bed.
I don't know about Angela, but my record for one day in the field was 9 snakes. What do you got?
Well, we had a three snake rule, and that didn't last for very long at all. We were down in Moccasin Creek, well named there, and I think after 6 we had to finally leave. It was how many snakes and how many bear that day? Like 3 bear and 6 snakes that day.
Have you seen Bigfoot or any remnants of Bigfoot?
There's been some very suspicious hares caught in barbed wire fences. That's about the only thing I've seen.
Yeah, I haven't heard any tree knocks or anything. Sometimes there's some piled up logs that we claim, was made by Bigfoot, but we've never seen any or anything like that.
So how did you get interested in geology?
I grew up in the rural community out on the countryside, and so I just grew up hiking around the hillsides and seeing rocks everywhere. And my science teacher actually was a geologist before he became a teacher in the petroleum industry, so I would bring different fossils to school to be identified. And I remember when I was in high school, hiking up one of the drainages, I found a nautiloid fossil, took photos of it, and my cousins brought me a paleo book, like an Audubon Society paleo book when I was in high school, and that got me hooked so that when I went to college, I knew I didn't want to sit in an office all day. And I started looking through the course book and saw that there was a class in invertebrate paleontology. Even though it was a 3rd level course, I said, this is what I want to do. So I went in and claimed geology as my major. I think my 2nd semester there at Tech. I've never looked back, and so I love it. I love my job, and, it's a great fit, I think.
Well, I came into it a little more sideways. I had started out at Hendrix College with the idea of getting a philosophy degree. That didn't really last too long and kind of took a couple years off, and then ended up going to UCA for a year. Then ended up at Tech because my mom pushed me here. She just really liked Tech. I started a history and political science degree here because of my background, but then I decided, what am I going to do with that? I need to get maybe more like a science degree of some kind. I didn't know which one. There again, looking through the catalog, I was attracted to study of the rocks and just the idea that I knew they went on field trips. And I like to get out and hike around too, like Angela. And so I decided that was the one for me. So I just started taking the courses and just really enjoyed it. And here I am.
Who was your professor here at Arkansas Tech that really pushed you towards this area?
Well, at the time we were here, Dr. Cahoon was the chair of physical sciences department and also one of 2 professors in the geology department. So we had almost all of our classes under Dr. Cahoon and then Dr. Victor Veer. They were both great. They really liked to get out and show us the rocks in the field. And, they were all about actually learning it from looking at it, not just from a textbook. So we were very lucky to have those 2.
Yes, I just want to add that we got a really great, well-rounded geology education at Arkansas Tech because we were able to take many courses in different aspects of geology. I really appreciate them giving us a good base for geology here at Tech. It was just a well-received degree. Many of us went on to get our master's at U of A. I think they really appreciated the education that a lot of us got here at Tech.
Do you still see any of your old classmates or instructors through the years after you graduated?
Oh, sure. We try to come back for the alumni get-togethers at Arkansas Tech every year. Students that we went to school with will show up at those and some of the older graduates as well. So it's a great opportunity to see some of them.
And we still see Dr. Cahoon quite frequently because he's the chair of the Arkansas Geological Commission, which is the group that oversees our activities at the survey. We still see him quite a bit. And other Tech graduates are also on the commission and work at the survey.
So what exactly is Arkansas sandstone, and is there different sandstones around the state, or is that just different locally?
Well, that's a big question.
Well, make it for us simple people that play. We like to play in the dirt, but we don't know what we're playing in.
Well, like I was saying earlier, the rocks are all categorized into what we call formations. And so each of those formations has a name, and they name it based on a geographic locality of where it was first described. So when you have something like the Parthenon sandstone, you're probably familiar with the Parthenon Valley up there in Newton County.
Right.
Angela here has named that sandstone, the Parthenon sandstone, based on outcrops that are in that Parthenon Valley area. So that's considered its type section. So yes, there are various sandstone formations. There's a Batesville sandstone named for Batesville. There's St. Peter sandstone, which is actually named for a river in Minnesota, but it's extensive formation that actually goes from Arkansas all the way to Minnesota and into Illinois and Missouri and those other states in between. So it just depends on where it was first described. That's what the names come from.
And if you get back to basics, sandstone is a rock that is made up of sand-sized grains, mostly of quartz. So in Arkansas, the majority of our sandstone is made up of tiny grains of the mineral quartz. So it's very hard. And there are sandstones in the Ozarks, Arkansas River Valley, and the Ouachita Mountains. Now, they may be a little bit harder in the Ouachita Mountains because that was subjected to the Ouachita Mountain building event. But all of these different sandstones that Richard was referring to are different ages too, so they will have a different name. And that's just so that we can communicate with other geologists throughout the state, across state boundaries, and also worldwide, that we can all kind of speak the same language.
So it doesn't matter on how far down from the surface.
Well, that would be in the subsurface, and different people that would be concerned with that would be water well drillers. Also, if you're drilling for oil and gas, want to be concerned with sandstone in the subsurface because it would be a reservoir rock. So, right, in different parts of the state, these sandstones will either crop out at the surface or they will only be present in the subsurface.
And of course, it is a stack of formations. The older ones, of course, are on the bottom and the younger ones are at the top, unless you do get out in the Ouachitas where there's been a lot of structural deformation. So sometimes that's overturned. And so you have to figure out which is the oldest and which is the youngest. Generally speaking, especially if we're talking in North Arkansas, it would be oldest to youngest.
So like the Parthenon sandstone would be different levels of it over the years.
Really one different bluff line. It's really a bluff forming sandstone that caps the Boston Mountains portion of the Ozark Plateaus. So that's the only area where it crops out is in the Boston Mountains Plateau portion of the Ozarks. And then say maybe you're around Batesville, Arkansas, you have the Batesville sandstone named for Batesville. If you're around Fayetteville, Arkansas, you also would have, the Batesville sandstone, but you also have other sandstones that are stacked in a different order. In each plateau, you're going to have different sandstones. Like the Parthenon is only cropping out in that Boston Mountains region.
Can you explain to the listeners what state map is and how that works?
Sure. State map is a component of the National Cooperative Geologic Mapping Program. So there's 3 components. There's state map, fed map, and ed map. So state map is a portion of this geologic mapping program. This has been mandated by Congress in 1992 for every state to be completely mapped, geologically that is, to provide the foundation for everything else that you see. For getting water, minerals, oil, and gas, you have to start with a good geologic map. So the state map portion is for every geological survey to write proposals to ask for money that is matched by the USGS. So every year I write a proposal for us to do geologic mapping in the northern part of the state because that's where we're focused right now. Of course, we submit this to the USGS. They only have a certain amount of money, so we always get a decrease in funding every year. And I have to revise that grant accordingly. We will get our award to start the mapping every July 1. And then we have to turn in geologic maps into the next fiscal year, June 30th. There's a Fed map portion, which is for the USGS to do mapping under that system. And then there's also the Ed map portion, which is for universities to have their graduate students start to learn how to do geologic mapping. So then they can join the job force because we're really kind of losing our geologic mappers out here that we have around the United States.
Have you ever come across any coal mines or salt mines?
Well, I have. These would be very minor, small deposits of coal that were probably used locally by maybe just a blacksmith or a family back in the day. There might still be some timbers in there to hold it up, and it would only be maybe a foot or two thick. They would get out there and dig that back in there as far as they were able or willing to. One of them was in Coal Mine Hollow, and sure enough, after we looked through there, we found it. But there's other smaller coal deposits here and there that we've run into that weren't, of course, of economic value, but they're still something that we would describe when we're out in the field.
Angela, what about you? Have you found any coal or salt mines?
Well, definitely no salt mines. Actually, when Richard and I were mapping here around the Russellville area, trying to find, Sequoia's kind of salt area for those big tubs that they use, in Dover that they have on display, the big salt tubs. So we actually came to the library, did a lot of research, and tried to find the salt spring that they would take that water from to have that salt precipitate out. There really are no salt mines in Arkansas. Of course, the Arkansas River Valley is known for its coal mining around the Fort Smith area. And so several of those coal mines, when they were active, that's a popular place to take people to collect plant fossils. So in the past, we've had teacher workshops, where we've led teachers into some of those places, or other geologic clubs that we would take, into those areas to look for fossils or just to see the coal. Of course, now there's no coal mines active right now in the state. But yeah, you always run across old pits or prospects in the field, some lead and zinc workings or manganese. So there's a lot of different mineralization throughout the state that, were actively mined, small areas in the past that are no longer being mined for sure.
And just right here north of town, when we were in school, there were still some open pit coal mines that they have since reclaimed, but we used to go out there when we were at Tech and gather some plant fossils when we were here.
Angela, can you maybe describe a little bit more about the sequoia and the salt tubs you're talking about? Many of the listeners, including myself, might not be familiar as geologists might be.
Well, I guess the way we found out about them was when we were working in the field up here mapping the Treat Quad, and, specifically Simpson Quad as well. And if you drive through Dover and you would stop where they used to have their supermarket there in town, you can see that big black kettle. And it's a historic site marker right there. And if you get out and read it, it talks about them filling that with water and then having the salt precipitate out from the salt spring. So that's really how we learned about it. And then, we just came to the university to try to do research to figure out exactly where that spot was. We wanted to really find it in the field. Where is that salt coming from? We don't have, salt in the subsurface underground up here in the Arkansas River Valley. So, just as a geologist, we're always curious about things like that. So we never collected any water to have it tested or anything. We weren't actually sure we actually found the spring. If anyone's interested, they can always tour that kettle in Dover and then also talk to the Historical Society of Pope County.
And if anyone knows where that salt spring is, we'd still like to know.
Have you ever come across an old moonshine still or anything like that from the good old days?
We've seen bits and pieces of probably old stills that would be in a bluff shelter. There'd be a spring there, so they would have a ready supply of water. So no doubt there was some of that going on. We've not seen anything that's currently... nobody's distilling anything right now that we know of.
What about old vehicles or communes or anything like that? Have you ever come across something like that out in the woods?
Now, I have seen abandoned... what you'd call hippie communes up there in the Ozarks. And one in particular, there would be several. It was up on the South Fork of the Little Red River. It's in the Ozark National Forest. But anyway, there were several cabins up there that were, of course, deteriorating over time. And there would be several vehicles out there, some with trees grown up through them. So they'd been there for a really long time. We did talk to the guy that lived next to this area. He lived up on the hill above the valley. And he said that, there was some hippies down there in the early 70s, and they lived there for about 10 years. And that one of them had recently come back and written a memoir of his time there. And he actually stayed in one of the cabins down there while he was doing that. That was just one area. The others that we've seen, too, where it's obvious people had lived there at one time, but they're not there anymore. I don't know what became of them.
Angela, have you come across anything like that?
Sure, and one's pretty local, Luke, that you may know about in the Hurricane Wilderness area down there in the center of it. You know, there used to be a little community down there, and just some old buildings. And back when we were mapping it, there was a lady that was actually staying there, and you can't really drive down into there that easily. You have to cross the creek about, I think we counted 9 times.
9 times, okay, yeah.
Right, and if you have the spring floods, it, creates sandbars and you can't get through there. So one time we actually drove in all the way. A lady that lived down there would have to walk up to Highway 123 there at Dillon to get any supplies or mail or anything like that. You're along the Ozark Highlands Trail in that area as well. So there's a cabin down there in the valley that there's a sign-in book, and we would stop in there to read about who had been in the area. A lot of horseback riders would, ride down into that area from deer. We never actually got to meet the lady that lived there, but we always wanted to.
How does the survey let people know that they might be on their property or next to their property?
When we're out there mapping, of course, we're going to stop and ask permission from anybody that, in an area we're trying to get into to see. Now, of course, a lot of people don't live on their property, or they're just not there. They're out of state or whatever. So we'll just ask who's there if it's all right. Usually they'll know if their neighbors are going to care if you're on their land or whatever. So we just try to clear it with as many people as we can and get in there. And we're just passing through. We're not hanging out. We're just like getting in there, getting our data and getting out. So usually people don't have any problems with that. In fact, they're more than willing to show you their rock collection on their front porch or take you to an outcrop that they know of on their land. And most people are just more than happy to help out.
In the geology area, what's one thing that Arkansans don't know about this great state that they should know?
I think they should know that there's so many great geologic landforms out there in the state to see. And you really don't have to leave the state to see a lot, and a lot of those landforms are in our state park system. They're in our national forest, things like natural bridges, natural arches. We have great trail systems, the Ozark Highlands Trail and Ouachita Trail system. You just can't beat the bluff lines, the bluff shelters, the different limestone terrain that we have, the karst features, and just the beauty of the rock. And really, once you go out with a geologist and you go along with us on a trail hike or something and see that stuff, you'll really look at it in a different way. Even after 22 years, I'm still going out there, I'm seeing new things in the rock, and I'm still learning. It still amazes me. It's just beautiful.
How does the survey share the information they have with school children and others around the state and getting the education out there to the young students that might want to take this as a field?
Well, we go out to the schools whenever we're asked to come out, and we will talk to the teachers about any aspect of geology or earth science that they would like. We also try to follow the next generation science standards. They would like to do that as well. We also will come into home schools. We'll go out to any geologic club and do a presentation. We'll lead hikes for different groups. We work with the Master Naturalist program in the state to do trail hikes as well. We'll just do, whatever we're asked to do for these groups of people. And there's no fee. It's free. People don't realize that. They think it's a trick or something, but you can really call us up and ask us for information. That's what we're here for, is to provide you the basic information, the basic geology in the state. And yes, we need the younger generation. We need more geologists and scientists to step up and start filling in the gap. And we need more people that like to get out into the creeks and the hillsides and walk around and get off their electronics. So we really need that a lot. So it can be a healing thing for kids as well and people just to get out into nature. It's just good for you.
So what's this I heard a couple of years ago about a gentleman finding a dinosaur bone? And I think, Angela, you might have even been asked about it. What's the word of any dinosaurs being found in Arkansas?
Well, of course, we have the official state dinosaur, which is Arkansas friday. The foot bones of that particular dinosaur were found in the early 1980s. And that was sent to the University of Arkansas, where a geologist then compared that to foot bones of similar dinosaurs. And so that's really the only officially described dinosaur bones that have been found in the state. There have been some other bones found, but they have not been actually described and published yet in a journal. Just a few, bones there. But we also have dinosaur footprints that have been found. Large trackways of dinosaurs that were found back in the 1980s. Those were of the long neck or sauropod dinosaurs. And we do have 2 of those footprints at our office in Little Rock. And there is a trackway in the town of Nashville, Arkansas, where they used to have a Dino Days festival. And then as recent as maybe, 7 years ago, another trackway was found. This time the dinosaur footprints were 3-toed dinosaurs that scientists from the University of Arkansas think were probably from a Acrocanthosaurus, because there was a complete skeleton of Acrocanthosaurus found just across the state line in Oklahoma many years ago. So we're really lacking in dinosaur bones. We did have footprints where the dinosaurs probably walked along this ancient Gulf of Mexico seaway. Were they migrating? What were they doing? But if they died, on the edge of this ancient ocean, their bones were probably washed out to sea. So maybe that's why we don't have many preserved.
So what is the actual size of the dinosaur that was found in Arkansas?
Arkansas Friday, maybe about 9 to 12 feet tall, an ostrich-like dinosaur with a long neck and, bulbous eyes, and wasn't a ferocious dinosaur. I mean, big to us, relatively speaking. Dinosaurs were pretty large, so it's one of the smaller dinosaurs. An ornithomimid is the family that it belongs to, or ostrich-like dinosaur. It was bipedal. It walked on 2 legs, probably stole eggs and things like that. Omnivore, ate both plants and, meat.
So, Richard, have you ever come across any Indian artifacts or Indian grounds?
I tell you, the biggest thing on that is how many places we've come across where all those artifacts have been dug out already and they're gone. Almost every bluff shelter you come across in the Ozarks, at least in my experience, has been dug into for artifacts. And you'll see chips and things that they left. Their digging tools, shaker tables where they would try to get the arrowheads to come out of the dirt. And so you'll see that left behind, but you just don't see any artifacts. And I don't know what all the causes of that is, but I would say most of the sites are pretty much destroyed at this point.
So what are the rules if someone finds an artifact or something else out in the woods?
It depends. If you're on private property and you have gotten permission from the landowner, it's a possibility. If you're on national forest property, then you cannot take anything from the lands. Likewise, if you're in the state park or federal park system, you're not allowed to take rocks or plants or anything like that as well. Now, when we're mapping within these regions, then we do apply for a permit if we would like to collect rocks for future study. The Forest Service, the same way, we would talk with the Forest Service and get permission if we were going to collect from them as well.
Over under the number being 1 million, how many mosquito bites have you had?
It's really not the mosquitoes, it's the ticks. Probably 1 million tick bites, not as many mosquito bites.
I can give a plug to permethrin. It is like the miracle tick control that we use now, and we've had that for about the last 2 years and just not getting any tick bites anymore because of that.
What's something that you want the people to know about what you guys are doing, what the survey's doing, maybe some questions that you've gotten asked before from a student organization?
Well, I would say that sometimes I know it's difficult for the public to understand what we're doing, because we're out there looking at the rocks and they really don't see how it affects them at that moment in time. But, they need to know that it is very important that at any time nature could affect them. It could be because of the particular rocks they have on their farm, the particular rocks along their road system. You just never know when you're going to have a landslide or if you're in a karst terrain. So even though it may not affect them that day or maybe that year, it could in the future. So it's very important, to get that data and have it in the system at a scale that we can understand it. It is difficult to see that, just on a daily basis when you've never maybe had a natural disaster affect you. Or maybe you've never experienced drought or had to have water. Knowing what the rock formations are in your area gives you information. It gives you power because you might know where to get water. Or you might have rocks that you could quarry, or you might have certain elements on your property that could be mined at one time. It's very important to understand that, know how that could be important for you and affect you.
A lot of times we don't know how this information is going to be used in the future. It's just important that it be gathered and so that there is a baseline knowledge of what the surface materials are.
Have you ever partnered with any of the other states outside of Arkansas?
The only thing that I've done in that regard is trying to coordinate with surrounding states about those formation names that we were talking about earlier. A lot of times there'll be differences between the nomenclature in Arkansas and, say, Missouri or Kansas or Oklahoma. They have their own surveys that have traditions and how they have named things, and sometimes they don't coordinate with what we have done. We have a stratigraphic nomenclature committee started at the survey where we're trying to coordinate with the other surrounding states, and hopefully they're doing the same, especially as we are doing some sort of more detailed mapping in the Ozarks, especially the Atoka Formation, which is a stack of sandstones and shales that are very difficult to delineate between. We share the Atoka rocks with Oklahoma, and so they are going to be doing some mapping in their Ozark equivalent rocks pretty soon. And so we were hoping to get together and try to coordinate our naming system if we can do that.
And since we're, the Arkansas Geological Survey, we mainly deal with just the geology in Arkansas. However, we do attend regional meetings where we do share our data. So we do contact surrounding states for this particular region because we work in Arkansas. Students at universities, they work in all sorts of different states. So we may have people coming in from different states that are doing projects in Arkansas. So we want to try to share as much of that knowledge across state lines as possible. So we definitely deal with other states for regional type meetings, just seeing what other scientists are doing out there and staying current with the current research and projects.
So where can people go to enjoy the natural beauty that we have and learn more about the great state of Arkansas?
Mount Magazine is the highest point in the state. It's always a good one. I mapped the Weathers Quadrangle this year, and that's up in the Ozark National Forest area. And there's a Kings River Falls up there that's actually managed by the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission. Really wonderful place to go visit. There's a short, less than a mile long trail down to see that. It's actually flowing over the Parthenon sandstone, so that relates back to our sandstone question earlier.
One of my favorite places is the Richland Creek Wilderness Area, of course the Harrican Creek Wilderness Area, but you do really need to be mobile and be able to hike into these areas because they're roadless. But Richland Creek is just wonderful for fossils and looking at the different limestones. Pedestal Rock Scenic Area is another one of my favorites. You can't beat Crater of Diamond State Park, which has our state gem in it. And just thinking of, hey, this was a magma, that rose to the surface so quickly in just the matter of a day or hours and brought up these diamonds with it. Just how all these things formed in the state is pretty incredible as well. And the quartz, our state mineral, going down to one of the quartz mines, everybody loves the quartz. So those are some of my top picks.
And of course, Blanchard Springs Caverns. Everyone probably knows about that. That whole Sylamore area is just gorgeous and a great place to go spend some time. Any cave, you're going to learn about some subsurface geology by going into a cave, so that's of interest.
If they wanted to look online, where would they go to find out more information?
Well, we have a website.
www.geology.ar.gov.
Well, I want to thank both of you for taking time out of your schedule to let the listeners know about not only your passion for this area, but letting us know what we're blessed with in this state. So do you have any kind of closing comments or anything you want to share about the Arkansas Geological Survey?
I would just say, come and see us. Come and visit us. We'll give you 10 more times places to go, that we didn't even mention. But yeah, please come by and visit us or call us or email us.
Our office is located in Little Rock, so if you're ever down that way, please come by and see us.
And thank you, Luke. We really appreciated this time.
Yes, thanks, Luke.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure. That was really, really good. Well, that concludes our podcast. If you would like to listen to other podcasts from the ATU Library, go to our website at library.atu.edu and click on the podcast link.